What's up, power supply nerds? Are you down with PPLP? Yeah, I did it. I dropped a 1990 song reference when talking about a new power supply label you're going to start seeing on some PSUs, and that is PPLP. This comes our way through a press release from MSI dropped on Monday showing off PPLP. And you can see it right here. The PPLP.info Gold was awarded to the MAG A1000 GL PCIe as well as the MAG 850 GL PCIe 5 power supply. As MSI says, PPLP stands for PSU Performance Level Plan, and it is essentially similar to what you've seen already. In fact, you can see it in these two power supplies that have the PPLP Gold label, as well as 80 Plus, the familiar 80 Plus we all know and love, as well as the newcomer as well, but very well respected Cybernetics Gold. So, of course, people that have followed power supplies for a long time know 80 Plus Gold, Cybernetics Gold means very, very good efficiency. I do want to clear up something. A lot of people think having these sticker that says 80 Plus Gold means it's a good power supply. All it really means is it actually has passed efficiency standards by clear result, meaning it gets 80 plus gold. It's better than an 80 plus bronze power supply. It doesn't necessarily test for other conditions, which is what other companies are doing. But let's break down what we already know. These are the labels you're used to seeing on power supplies. The original 80 plus bronze, silver, gold, platinum, titanium, you get it. Plus is the cheap stuff. Titanium's the good stuff. More money for titanium, cheap on the plus. The other, of course, the newcomer, they've only been around for a few years in the public's face, but actually very well respected, is Cybernetics. It's out of a European test lab. It's actually run by a YouTuber that we've had videos with. That's Eris over at Hardware Busters. I encourage you to go over and check out his videos, like and subscribe. Does great stuff. Super duper power supply nerdy. But as you can see, again, you get Cybernetics Gold, silver, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, titanium, and at the tippy top, they have a diamond rating, which is the best thing ever, apparently, even though it's a commodity product that they restrict to make it more valuable. Okay, you got it. Those are the things you're seeing on power supplies. 80 plus gold, 80 plus is what you're very much used to on most power supplies. Cybernetics is the newcomer. You're seeing power supplies with Cybernetics and 80 plus. And sometimes you're actually seeing power supplies with Cybernetics and without 80 plus because, frankly, a lot of people think Cybernetics is doing a better job at testing these power supplies. That's up to everybody's beliefs. I actually kind of subscribe to that theory as well because I do like what they're testing. And now the newcomer, here's what they got. Here's what PPLP has. You got similar bronze, silver, gold, platinum, titanium. They didn't want to totally riff off of Cybernetics. At the top, we have Super TI or Super TI, as they might say at NVIDIA. And, of course, we have a 230-volt badge and a 115-volt badge. So you'll, as we saw with the MSIs, you could possibly see a power supply with all three labels on them. I'm not so sure that's going to happen, but we'll see. Let's actually go check out the website for PPLP, pplp.info. There isn't a lot here. The site actually has an English version and a Chinese version. We're going to stick with the English version so you can read it. Here's basically a bunch of power supplies they've added. Again, we have their ratings. They have ratings for these power supplies, and you can continue on. Again, there isn't a lot of information on PPLP. They are brand new. Maybe they're still building up their website, but they do say that they have tested more than 500 power supplies, providing vendors, I'm guessing, with reliable data analysis, product analysis, constructive suggestions. Now we have passed PSU Performance Level Plan, PPLP, to make excellent and highly reliable power supply stand out and occupy a leading position in the market. Obviously, they need a copy editor here and enable more consumers to trust. They are testing for ATX Level 3, PSU Performance Level. They are also doing sound level. And they are saying that they are also doing build quality level, although I will say that part of the website isn't built out. I really don't know what they're actually publishing as far as the build quality levels. There's some more sort of marketing copy here, faced with fierce competition, blah, blah, blah. Got it. Some of the stuff they're testing: dynamic load, peak power, 2% load performance, 12-volt high power, peak power, silent testing, various standard tests. Badges again, and then we have a more power supply levels that they're testing for, and they are also testing for ATX 3. If you actually pass ATX 3, basically checking a power supply to see if it can meet the excursion levels laid out by the power supply specs. Basically, power supplies have for a long time had GPUs exceeding the performance of the power supply. So if you plug in a very powerful 3090, a 3090 Ti made by an add-in board vendor, it might actually use more power than a power supply can provide. Typically, power supplies that were built better, that had bigger capacitors, they had more capacitive power, could hold up to that excursion, basically using more power for a short amount of time. But because there were never any standards, some power supplies, even though one is 1,000, the other one's 1,000, one had bigger capacitors, one had smaller capacitors. The one with bigger capacitors, capacitive level, might do fine when it went above the actual excursion levels, again, using more power than was expected. And the one with the smaller caps might not, causing a lockup or a crash. So ATX 3.0 through ATX 3.1 was born, and basically setting some fences to say, you know what, you need to hit this level in order for you to be reliable. And what that does is the power supply vendors know this is the wall, and the graphics card vendors know this is the wall. So they're not going to exceed that, because it's entirely possible power supplies might not pass that. And PPLP will be doing a badge for that too. And here's their badge for their audio levels. We'll get more into the audio levels later. And hey, by the way, build quality level, it will arrive soon. Still working on that. There are also ratings for fans, heatsinks, chassis. Stay tuned. So obviously the information is not there. And they are saying, hey, by the way, we're not using Gordon Ung level of equipment here. We got a full-on Chroma 8000. When I looked into Chroma 8000 units in the 2000s, the late 90s, they were like $80,000 to $90,000, and that was 20 years ago. So I can't imagine how much Chroma 8000 is these days. So clearly, they're not playing with toys. They're using Chroma 6000s as well as Tektronix gear. So basically, they're showing that we're using real hardware. We're not just screwing around here. They have a hemi-conic chamber. They work with these power supply vendors. And we also have some quotes. Again, the one from MSI, another one from Superflower, and another one from the CEO of EXP Review, which will be interesting, because I'm going to talk about that later, because there are possibly some relationships between EXP Review and PPLP. Again, more on that later that I've dug up. But let's get into what you get out of the recognized test labs. We'll start with 80 Plus. 80 Plus, Clear Result has been around again forever. They were the first ones to really sort of start testing power supplies for efficiency when it became a thing a long time ago. They're testing at 20%, 50%, 100%. And you get a sticker based on that. You get the information, as you can see, for platinum, for titanium. Again, to hit platinum, you need 92% efficiency. For gold, you need 90% efficiency at 50%. And again, this is basically what Clear Result is testing, because power supplies were not that efficient in the early days, and there was a push to make them more efficient, especially at the lower levels where most machines sit. When you're not doing anything in your PC, you're idling. Most of the time, that's where you're going to use most of your power, because it might be idling for hours, because people don't ever use standby, rather than you sitting there and running at 80 to 90%. So efficiency, especially at the low loads, are very important. But you can see all this is published on 80 Plus. Got it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Again, they are the recognized player here. They are still what everybody looks for on a power supply. A few years ago, though, Cybernetics showed up. And, this is, again, run by YouTuber Eris. Go to, again, I'm gonna mention Hardware Busters. But their feeling is like, you know what? We think there's a better way to test power supplies. 80 Plus, hey, we respect them. They're the OGs in this, but we think there's more ways to test it. just testing at 20%, 80%, 100% isn't enough. So we are actually going to be testing power supplies at 1,450 different load combinations. And they're basically basing that on interpolation of results that can mean up to 25,000 measurement points of data points. So basically, they are able to determine a power supply's efficiency across a full range rather than just simply at this sort of very core steps. As you can see, again, they're publishing all this 93% efficiency, 91 for titanium, 89% greater for platinum, 87% to 89 for gold. You get it. All this information is published on their website. So, again, not too different than what we were seeing out of PLP here. But let's actually go into where I think there are a lot of similarities to what PLP is doing. Looks like they're taking they're cribbing a little bit from Cybernetics here. On the left, we have Cybernetics. This is what it takes to get a diamond rating. And on the right, we have PLP for, hey, by the way, diamond rating, 93%. For Super TI, it's 93%. For titanium from Cybernetics, 91%. For titanium for PPLP, 91%. 87% for Cybernetics Gold, 87% for PPLP Gold. So a lot of people sort of saw this. I sort of saw it's like, are you just simply copying this stuff from Cybernetics? And certainly looks like it. I will say, though, it doesn't make it invalid because, frankly, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I do think that, you know what? It kind of makes sense. If you already have somebody that you respect doing power supplies and they've established these as some important ratings, let's do that as well. And also, let's be honest, if somebody's done the hard marketing work to help you understand what a Cybernetics Gold is, what a Cybernetics Platinum is, what a Cybernetics Silver is, there's no reason for you to try to disagree with them just to be a little different and then confuse people because your platinum is different than their platinum and your gold is different than their gold. And it's the same reason we have Intel starting with Core i3, Core i5, Core i7, and AMD having Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7. There's no reason to try to reinvent the wheel. It actually helps consumers understand that, you know what, our Ryzen 3 is competitive with their Core i3. Our Ryzen 7 is competitive with the Core i7. So I think that is very fair. If you just want to start screaming about it, you do have to consider that it just simply makes sense. You're going to do what the established players in the market are doing, not try to reconvince everybody that you're better. So that's very tough. This is actually pulled from a report on the right, Cybernetics. We see an efficiency report. Again, full range, because again, you have 1,450 results, and that's built on many, many thousands more data points. So you get a full range feel for how efficient that power supply is. Under 115 volts in red, in black 230 volts. And on the left, this is the report for what I believe is the same MSI MAG A850GL PCIe 5 from newcomer PPLP. As you can see, it's probably not, although this curve kind of gives you the feeling they have more data points. But still, you got 90% at a full load, and it looks like your best you're going to get out of this power supply is 92.75% efficiency at about 275 watts. And that's at 230. If you crank it down to 115 volts at about 300 watts, you're looking at about 91% efficiency. So again, you're getting more information than you would from an 80 plus sticker because again, the complaint that a lot of people have had about 80 plus is it's just not enough efficiency steps. Again, that's what Cybernetics, that's why they push 1,450 different results. And it looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, at least 11. I believe there are more data points that PPLP has. So you can at least say that PPLP has more test points than we are getting out of 80 plus. So that's actually in their favor. Although obviously Cybernetics is giving you the most out of their report. This next one is the acoustic level rating. On the right, we have Cybernetics. And I will say this is far more stringent, it looks like, because look, you go from 40 dBA for standard PSU all the way up to 15 dBA for an A+, and then below 15 dBA for A++. And you don't see that it getting quite as hardcore for PPLP, although you still get your sticker. So 42 to 45 dBA for C rating, 39 to 42 for B, B+, 36 to 39. Let's go all the way from A, which is 33 to 36, to the S tier, which apparently for young people means better than A. I don't know where that's coming from. But for below 30 dBA, you get an S rating for your power supply. That's not so far from A+, frankly. So I don't think that's quite as valuable. I would say if you got a power supply with A++, that is better, right? So, okay, that's the audio rating. I do want to also point out, if you go to a legitimate test lab, somebody that you believe and you trust in, like 80 Plus, again, they're the established players here. They publish all of their information for power supply vendors to look at the equipment they use, the test points. Again, they're using Chroma equipment. They have all of their tests laid out for vendors to look at, not necessarily for consumers, but again, it's very comprehensive what they're doing, and it is spelled out. You do want that information to be public. Cybernetics also does the same. You can download multiple reports from there. This is a 30-page report, in fact, showing what they do. Again, only power supply nerds are going to read through this, and I mean hardcore power supplies. And again, here is the test setup and measurement conditions that Cybernetics is doing. It's quite different. They actually have taken digs at people who use Chroma 8000 units, saying, you know what, Chroma 8000s, they're nice, they're expensive, but they actually can't test with the granularity that we can. That's the reason we can do 1,450 test points, whereas Chroma will not actually do this. So this is all the hardware they use to do their testing. And again, it gets into, very, very expensive and complicated test equipment that they're doing. It is published because when you send a power supply to them, you got to include a check for your power supply. If it fails, you got to send it again to have it tested again and probably send more money. So they want the vendor to know you got to pass these tests. It would be wrong for them to publish these tests and then not actually have the test known publicly that they have to pass, right? So I think that's a good thing. But let's check out what you're going to get. So if you send a power supply to Cybernetics, they then publish a PDF with all the information. You can see this one here. That is for that MSI power supply, that 850. It's made by CWT, Channelwell. Here's the model number. Here's the test equipment they use. Good stuff. I like it. Here's the 150. It was tested at 115. It was tested at 230. What I really dig, though, is they actually go through and they look at the wires. They tell you the ATX main power connector built with 18-gauge wires. The 6-pin PCIe was made with 18-gauge wires. So that is very good. And obviously, they've tested the wires, and also that means, like, if you get one and your wires don't match that same gauge, that's a problem. They also tell you the fan, who makes the fans. They tell you who makes all the components. They do a full teardown. They publish that information of the power supply here. They tell you who makes the capacitors. They tell you who makes the MOSFETs. So that's what you get out of a Cybernetics report on a power supply. It's stuff that's going to make you feel very good. Again, here's that full range efficiency. Let's scroll down through a lot of this stuff. It's way over a lot of my head. It's over an average person's head, but again, you could download this and it's just going to make you feel warm and fuzzy that a third-party lab that was paid by MSI or Corsair or Silverstone basically has done all this testing. And at the end, you see the power supply, that picture of it. You see a picture of the label and the labels they're giving it. They're giving it a Standard Plus for audio, for acoustics, and they're actually giving it a Cybernetics Platinum as well. And there's something to be mentioned here later, because let's see what you get from PPLP. PPLP is also doing the same thing where they're publishing a PDF. So again, here is an MSI MAG-A850GL. I believe it is the same power supply. They do say this was self-purchased, so it wasn't submitted by MSI, interestingly. Test agency is PPLP Lab. It was built by Channelwell, CWT. Yeah, we have a picture of it. We have a picture of the label. This is probably why, by the way, they cropped in on that picture over at Cybernetics. They didn't want you to see that 80 Plus label. So here's the test equipment. Here's the test they ran, right? So again, pretty decent. And we know PPLP says, hey, you know what? We're going to give this a PPLP Gold for 115 and 230 volts. And we're also going to give an ATX 3.0 class. And you get the signature from the lab director, some more tests, as well as here's that efficiency curve. So again, this is all stuff that if you want to buy a power supply, here's hold up times. It's going to make you feel good because, hey, again, a third-party lab has done all this testing. And hey, I feel good about that. And of course, I do have to point this out because this is, I know you're asking this. I know you're asking like, wait a minute. I see a PPLP gold. Let's go back to that previous one from Cybernetics. They got a platinum, but this power supply MSI is showing off. It has a PPLP gold. It has an 80 plus gold, but it only gets the Cybernetics gold sticker on there. What's up with that? And I actually asked Cybernetics like, whoa, am I mixed up? It's the same power supply. Maybe that's what happened here, but generally Cybernetics did tell me, you know what? It's up to the power supply vendor to label it the way they want to. They don't have a problem if they give a power supply an 80 plus platinum rating and that power supply vendor decides to basically give it a lower grade sticker because they don't want to confuse people, because they want everything to line up and everything to be gold. If one is platinum and the two others are gold, that's going to create confusion. We just don't want to have our customers confused and create problems. It's okay for them to get actually a higher quality power supply according to Cybernetics, but with a lower grade sticker. That's fine. Cybernetics' problem is like if we give a power supply a bronze rating and you try to stick a platinum rating on there, we're going to have problems with that, and you are not going to be able to misrepresent our brand that way. So that's what gets you in trouble. But go ahead. If you want to sell for less money, if you want to have consumers think it's a lower grade power supply, that's up to you. That's not our problem. So that's where that rationale comes from. So let's keep going. The real question, though, is like, why do we need a third agency? And I think a lot of this is because of the cost structures here. This is Clear Results webpage. It's basically if you want to submit a power supply for testing, here's some data center power supplies. It's $8,000 for 480 volt. For more consumer level power supplies, and a 115 volt power supply is $6,500. That's obviously, I don't know if that's the fixed price, because maybe if you're sending 10 power supplies, maybe they give you a break. But generally, the list price to have one power supply tested from Clear Result to get an 80 plus sticker is $6,500. That doesn't buy you a gold, but they test it, and if they give you a gold or a platinum or a bronze, that's what you get. But to have them test that and to be able to use that 80 plus sticker, $6,500. Also, if I take this power supply, if I, Gordon Young Power Supply Company, go and buy a CW, pretend this is a CWT power supply, it's already passed as an 80 plus gold. Why do I have to pay to rebrand it? If I buy this power supply and I'm just putting my Gordon Young Power Supply sticker on here, can I just put an 80 plus gold on here? No. You actually still have to submit it for retesting, and even though it's a rebrand of an existing power supply, because for all Clear Result knows, Gordon Young has said, you know what, give me this power supply. I know it's 80 plus gold in this configuration, but I want you to put some bronze components in here because I don't care. I want to sell for less money. Now, if I'm CWT or I'm a power supply company, maybe they go like, you know what, customer is always right and your money's good as long as that check clears. Do with you what you will, because our name ain't on it. You're the one who's going to eat the warranty. Now, that's why you are not allowed to just simply stick the same 80 plus gold sticker on there if this is an 80, even though the original power supply was 80 plus gold, because for all they know, Gordon Young Power Supply has got lousy components inside of it, and that's why you have to pay $3,500 to have it retested. So, but again, you can see this being a significant cost adder, because if I'm spinning a 900 watt, 850 watt, 700 watt, 600 watt, 500 watt, that's four $6,500 checks I have to submit. That adds up. So people like to start looking at, some things that are cheaper. I will say, asking around, Cybernetics, as I understand it, is around 2K-ish. It's in euro, so it's more expensive these days. But, that is a pretty decent price, especially considering you get that published report. You're actually getting what looks to me, and I would say, is more stringent testing. So we're actually starting to see some power supply vendors go, you know what? We're going to start to sell power supplies with cybernetics stickers instead of the gold, instead of 80 plus, because now that cybernetics is now being recommended by a lot of people, it's being recognized as a useful metric for power supply quality and efficiency. We're going to go with that. We're not going to cut all these checks to 80 plus, see how that works out. I've already seen some power supplies do that, and I expect there to be more. And again, this is what's probably good for the market, because if one vendor is charging less and the other one's charging more, maybe this vendor has to come down, and hopefully that money trickles down to consumers. Maybe you get a little less, you pay a little less for that power supply. The question is, how much is PPLP charging? Originally, I heard that there wasn't any charge, but I have actually heard from a source I do trust that it looks like it's about $3 to $4K. I have not confirmed that with PPLP. I actually have emailed PPLP for more information, how much they charge, who the heck are they, how are they doing their testing, that kind of stuff. I have not heard from them yet. I will do a video, hopefully, if I get that information. But 3 to 4K is, again, less than 80 plus. It's more than cybernetics. And again, I've not confirmed that with anybody else. Maybe there's a bulk rate, who knows. But again, you have three players sort of playing against each other. Maybe that will help with the pricing for consumers, because again, I can't see a power supply company going with the power supply with all three labels for every single power supply, because that's going to get very, very expensive. You're just going to sort of want to go with, one label eventually if you're getting the consumer recognition on that power supply. So, this is actually the one thing I do want to bring up, because there have been some conspiracy theories like, is PPLP, did MSI just create its own lab to do its certification? I can tell you that's just simply wrong. I've heard from 3 different independent sources that I trust saying that PPLP looks like it's basically associated with this very well-respected website for power supply reviews, expreview.com. It's actually a Chinese website that does hardware reviews. Here is actually a link to a Corsair TX1000 that they did a review on. I'm just going to scroll through this, hopefully not too quickly and make you seasick. But okay, power supply testing. Looks pretty typical. We got pictures, and then it gets very, very hardcore. They do a full tear down on the power supply. They open up the guts. They're taking a picture of the PCB. They go in, they take a picture of all the components, the caps, the PFC, all that. So basically they go on, they list out the materials. You can again see here they're doing their load testing. Continue on. Again, power supply testing, the fine art of power supply testing has not been what it has been in the past. It's very expensive to do. And look, here is that a conversion efficiency graph, standby efficiency. So they're doing output ripple, crossloads. It's clear that they are not your average power supply tester. They are doing very, very well deep dives into power supplies. That, again, very, very few. I'm not going to say there are none that do it, but there are very few websites and very few YouTube websites that are doing these kind of full teardowns of power supplies. I wouldn't do it these days because I'd probably kill myself grabbing onto a charged up cap. But again, so it looks very much, and again, I have 3 different sources telling me PPLP is basically a new arm of EXP Review. What I imagine what happened is someone at EXP Review on the business side said, hey, you know what? We paid for all this equipment. We're doing all this testing. Clear Results making money. Cybernetics making money. Let's make some money. Let's have a certification lab. Let's sell people stickers. You're doing all the testing anyway. Let's do this as well for the lab itself. I do hope they actually separate editorial from the actual certification lab, because that's the way you're supposed to do it. They should be kept separate. The testing should be kept separate. There should be a firewall. But I'm actually okay with this because it makes me feel a little better that it's actually a hardware website. Most hardware websites do it for simply the love of hardware rather than a state agency, which I'm not sure what exactly their motivation is. So it actually makes me feel a little bit better that PPLP looks like it's associated with a website that looks like it does very legitimate testing. So that is the skinny on that. the information. Again, I don't think that's going to change because I've been told this by multiple people at this point. I don't think it's going to change. It's not going to come back and say it's, again, some of the crazy theories out there, those are not right. And it doesn't look like it's a state-owned agency trying to, basically create something kind of local standards. Doesn't look like it's that either. So that's the story on PPLP as far as I know it. And I'm going to actually close out with one more place for information you can get it, and that is Intel compatible products. You can go to compatibleproducts.intel.com and go here, click on power supply selector, and you can go through and you can see testing that Intel has done on multiple power supplies. There are many power supplies that Intel has tested. I don't think they're publishing the report here, but there is a different place you can get more information on the tests that they have run on these power supplies. They also have their power supply and design guides that they've published. The reason why, of course, Intel, I will say, they do this basically to uplift the entire industry. They don't charge at all. And of course, uplifting the entire industry because they are testing it to make sure these power supplies can run Intel CPUs, which is good because they use a lot of power, but they want to make sure the power supplies are up to snuff. But Intel is another place you can go to get information, and they do it for free, not like the other labs that are charging for this. A power supply vendor simply sends them a power supply, they test it, they publish the information. That's it. So you basically have four sources. You have Intel doing it for free. They're going to continue to do that. You have the established clear result with 80+. You have the well-respected Cybernetics. I respect them. I think probably it's the gold standard right now for power supply testing that you can get. I frankly would trust the Cybernetics sticker on a label probably more than the others. And now you have PPLP, the newcomer. I don't know if there's going to be room for all three, but we'll see how it shakes out because hopefully it'll be good, because if they're fighting against each other, if the power supply vendors decide this vendor is the one that people are recognizing and coalescing around, we're going to give them more money. We're going to drop these other vendors' labels. Those vendors, are going to go we're cutting prices. We're giving you a deal. So maybe we'll see that show up to power supplies and better prices. But again, there's a new player in town, and that is the story on it that I know so far. More information as I get it here on PC World's website, as well as PC World's YouTube channel.